Ethan Cole ran across the jagged rocks, his boots crunching against the broken ground. Smoke and sparks rose from the battle behind him. The human squad had been attacked without warning, and chaos spread in every direction. Explosions shook the air and alien ships darted across the sky like dark birds of prey. Ethan's heart pounded, but he focused on one goal: survive. He ducked behind a fallen pillar of stone, gasping for air. Around him, human soldiers shouted and fired their weapons. Some had been hit, lying motionless in the dust. Ethan's communicator crackled. "Cole, report." It was Lieutenant Grayson, his voice tense. "Where are you?" "I'm pinned down near the ridge." Ethan shouted back. "Too many of them. I can't get through." The wind carried a sharp whistle and something large fell nearby. Ethan instinctively jumped back. When the dust cleared, he saw a collapsed structure. Part of it had fallen over a strange figure. The alien looked like nothing Ethan had ever seen. Its skin shimmered faintly in silver-blue shades, and it wore armor that was both elegant and dangerous-looking. The figure moved slightly. Ethan's heart tightened. The alien was alive but injured badly. It was a woman. He could tell from the shape of her face, though it was alien, almost otherworldly. Her eyes were wide with pain, and blood ran down her side, soaking into her armor. For a moment, Ethan froze. He knew she was the enemy. She was from the Varn Empire, humans' sworn opponents in this war. If he touched her, his squad might see him as a traitor. But her life was in danger, and he could not ignore it. Ethan took a deep breath and ran to her side. "Hey," he called, keeping his voice calm. "I'm here to help." "Don't move." The alien princess, he realized she must be important by the ornament on her chest, turned her head slowly. She hissed something in her language, sharp and unfamiliar. Ethan did not understand the words, but the meaning was clear. "Stay away. I'm not going to hurt you," Ethan said gently, kneeling beside her. "I just want to help." She narrowed her eyes but did not fight. Her breathing was heavy and she winced as she tried to shift. Ethan noticed that a piece of her armor had been pierced and the wound was deep. He reached into his pack and pulled out a med kit, unzipping it quickly. "Hold still," he said, more to himself than to her. He carefully cleaned the wound and wrapped it with a bandage. She flinched, but he held her hand steady. Why?" she asked finally in broken English from her translator patch. "Why help enemy?" Ethan shrugged, trying to keep it casual. "Because you need it. That's all." Her eyes widened. No one in her empire would help an enemy like this, no one. She studied him closely, suspicion mixing with a strange curiosity. Ethan noticed her armor glinting under the setting sun. It looked strong, regal, and deadly, but now it was cracked and dented like her strength itself was wounded. "Your name?" she asked after a moment. "Ethan," he replied. "Ethan Cole. You?" "Kara," she said softly, almost a whisper. "Princess Kara," Ethan nodded. That confirmed it. She was royalty. And he was alone with her in the middle of a war zone, surrounded by danger. But he did not feel fear, not exactly. He felt responsibility. "Kara," he said. "You're not safe here. We need to move you." She tried to stand, but pain forced her back down. Ethan grabbed her carefully, lifting her with steady arms. She made a small sound of protest, but he ignored it. Step by step, he carried her to a safer spot, a ruined building that still had walls intact and offered cover. Inside, Ethan set her down gently. "Better?" he asked. Kara nodded, but her eyes studied him carefully. She seemed to be trying to understand him. Humans were strange, she thought. They risked everything for someone else. They were unpredictable, dangerous, but not always in the way her empire feared. Ethan checked her armor. Sparks of energy still flickered from a broken power cell near her chest plate. "This could explode if it hits water or rain," he said. "We need to fix it." Kara watched him work. She had seen many humans before in war and in battle, but none had ever treated her wounds with such care. They always pushed her aside, tried to capture her, or ignored her pain. "You are different," she said finally. Ethan smiled faintly. "I like to think we're capable of being helpful, even to people we don't know well." Her eyes narrowed. "You are strange." "I get that a lot," Ethan said, chuckling softly. He finished patching her armor and activated the remaining shield. Sparks subsided. "There, that should hold for now. But you'll need more than that. You'll need rest. You can't fight until you recover." Kara said nothing. Instead, she touched her side where the wound still ached. She realized humans did not always act out of duty or fear. Sometimes they helped because it felt right. That idea was foreign to her. "Why?" she asked again, quieter this time. "Why risk?" Yourself? Ethan looked at her, his expression serious. Because I can. And because it matters. Sometimes helping someone, even an enemy, is the right thing, Kara blinked. Her translator struggled to make sense of the words. Right thing? She repeated. Yes, Ethan said. It's hard to explain, but humans believe in helping each other even when it's dangerous. She studied him in silence. The wind outside blew debris past the ruined building. Alien ships hovered above, searching. Ethan's heart pounded. They could be spotted at any moment. Ethan went to his pack and pulled out 2 ration bars and some water. He handed one to Kara. Eat, he said. You need energy. Kara hesitated, but hunger and weakness overcame her caution. She took it slowly, watching him as she ate. He smiled faintly, offering his own water. The gesture was simple, but it carried something she had never felt before. Trust. Hours passed. Ethan sat beside her, keeping watch. He patched minor scrapes and talked quietly, explaining small things about human life, about Earth, and about the front line. Kara listened, sometimes confused, sometimes fascinated. Your people, she said finally. You humans. You are not like we thought. You are strong and kind, Ethan shrugged. Kind enough to keep you alive tonight, he said with a smile. Kara looked at him, her large eyes reflecting the fading sunlight. No one had ever looked at her like that, like she was important not because she was a princess, but because she was alive. Her empire had taught her to expect fear, respect, or obedience. Not kindness. Not simple care, Kara, Ethan said gently. You'll make it. I'll make sure of it. We just need to hold until help arrives. For the first time since the battle began, Kara felt a flicker of hope. This human, this strange creature who called himself Ethan, had saved her life without expectation, without fear, and she realized something she could not yet name. She trusted him. Night fell on Valtora. Stars sparkled above, distant and cold. But inside the ruined building, Kara and Ethan sat together, sharing warmth, food, and quiet conversation. She studied him, trying to understand the human way. He laughed quietly at her confused expressions, and she almost smiled back. Somewhere deep in the shadows outside, the enemy continued their hunt. But inside, a small bond formed, a bond that could change not only their lives, but perhaps the fate of their worlds. As she drifted into a restless sleep, Kara's last thought was a strange one. This human is different. He might be the first to show me what we have been missing. And Ethan, watching over her, whispered softly, almost to himself, You'll be okay. Kara, I won't let anything happen to you. The battle raged beyond the walls, but for a brief moment, 2 enemies had found something like trust, like care, and maybe something more. The night on Valtora was quiet for the first time since the battle. Ethan Cole stayed awake, keeping watch over the ruined building. His hand rested on his rifle, but his eyes often wandered to Kara. She slept on a makeshift bed of cloths and blankets he had found, her breathing shallow but steady. The alien princess looked so fragile in the dim light, and yet she radiated a kind of strength that made Ethan respect her even more. When dawn arrived, Kara stirred. Her silver-blue eyes blinked open, and for a moment she seemed unsure of where she was. She looked around, her gaze landing on Ethan. He smiled faintly. Morning, he said quietly. How do you feel? Kara tried to sit up but winced. Pain. Much, she admitted, her voice still soft and careful. You helped me. Why? Ethan shrugged, his expression simple. Because it was the right thing to do, and because no one else here would. Kara tilted her head. Right thing, humans. Strange. Ethan laughed softly. We are. I'll give you that. She did not smile back. Instead, she studied him. Humans were unpredictable creatures. Some fought with honor, some with fear, and some did something as simple and unusual as helping an enemy. Kara did not understand how anyone could act without expecting gain, and yet here was a human doing exactly that. Ethan stood carefully, stretching his stiff muscles. We can't stay here forever, he said. We need to find a safer place and signal for help. Kara tried to rise, but Ethan stepped forward and steadied her. Careful. You're not fully healed. She looked at him, and for the first time she did not glare. She did not resist. Instead, she let him guide her. It was strange, this feeling of trust. Kara had never allowed anyone to touch her like this except maybe her closest guards. and even then it was out of duty, not care. Together, they stepped outside. The landscape was rugged and jagged, scarred by the recent battle. Smoke rose in the distance and the air smelled of burning metal and alien dust. Ethan kept close to Kara, his eyes scanning for danger. "Do you fight often?" Kara asked, her voice curious. Ethan smiled faintly. "I fix things mostly. Tech, machines, medkits, but yes, sometimes I have to fight. I try not to, though." Kara's eyes narrowed. Humans were strange. They had technology and they had weapons, but they also had patience and sometimes mercy. She could not reconcile these contradictions. They walked in silence for a while. Ethan carried her supplies and occasionally, Kara helped when she could. It was awkward at first, but gradually they found a rhythm. She did not speak much, but when she did, she asked questions. Questions about Earth, about humans, and about why Ethan was different from what she had expected. "Your people, why fight us?" she asked suddenly. Ethan stopped walking and looked at her. "Because war happens, but we don't hate you as people. We fight because we have to, not because we want to. We're capable of being better." Kara blinked. She had never heard words like that before. In her empire, humans were enemies. They were creatures to conquer, to destroy, or to fear. Yet here was one who saw beyond that. They reached a shallow cave, partially hidden behind a rocky outcrop. It offered some protection from the wind and from prying eyes. Ethan helped Kara inside and began setting up a small area for rest and supplies. "You make strange camp," Kara said, watching him place blankets and ration packs carefully. Ethan laughed softly. "Better than sleeping on sharp rocks." He handed her some water. "Drink." She hesitated, then drank. Humans were strange creatures indeed. They spoke with words of comfort, offered food and water freely, and yet they were strong, capable, and unafraid. Kara could not help but feel a strange admiration for him. As the day passed, they talked more. Ethan told her small things about human life. The taste of chocolate, the feeling of rain, the joy of music. Kara listened carefully, fascinated. She had never considered that other beings could enjoy life in ways unrelated to power, status, or duty. "You enjoy such things?" she asked. Ethan nodded. "Yes, life is more than battles and orders. You have to find things that make you happy. Otherwise, what's the point?" Kara considered this. Happiness. That was not something her people spoke about. They spoke of honor, duty, and power. But here was a human talking about joy and simple pleasures. It was different. As the sun began to set, Ethan prepared a small fire. The warmth and light made the cave feel safer, and Kara sat across from him, still cautious but curious. "You, not afraid?" she asked, studying him. Ethan shook his head. "I'm cautious, yes. Afraid sometimes, yes. But not when I have to care for someone. I think fear is useless if you let it stop you from doing what's right." Kara's eyes widened slightly. The idea was strange. Her empire taught that fear was control, that fear made soldiers obey and enemies bow. Yet this human seemed to treat fear as a tool, not a weapon. "You, human, very strange," she said softly. "I get that a lot," Ethan replied with a small grin. The night deepened, and the fire flickered. Kara tried to sleep, but she found herself watching him instead. His movements were simple, his manner calm. He repaired a small communicator, checked his weapons, and even sang quietly to himself in a soft human tune. Kara felt something she could not name. Curiosity? Admiration? Or something stranger, something like trust. She realized that for the first time, she felt safe with someone who should be her enemy. Hours later, Ethan noticed her watching him. "You don't have to be so careful," he said. "I'm not going to hurt you." Kara tilted her head. "I'm not used to kindness." "It confuses me," Ethan smiled softly. "Then maybe it's time you got used to it." The next day, Ethan taught Kara how to repair simple tech. She was hesitant at first, but her curiosity won over. Together, they fixed a small signaling device, testing it carefully. Kara watched his hands, the way he worked with patience, and she realized how much humans could accomplish when they worked together rather than alone. "You, very skilled," she said quietly. Ethan shrugged. "I do my best. You learn fast, too. I think you'd make a good engineer if you wanted to." Kara blinked. No one in her life had ever said she could do something for herself, for curiosity, for interest. Her life was duty and orders, but here was a human encouraging her, simply, without expectation. As the day wore on, they shared small stories. Kara spoke of her empire, of her father, of battles she had seen and victories she had taken. Ethan listened, asking questions, never judging. Sometimes he laughed softly at her dry humor, and she almost smiled, caught off guard by the feeling. When night came again, they shared a simple meal. Ethan offered her half of his rations and she took them, realizing how strange it was that a human could share so freely. "You call this food?" she asked. Ethan laughed. "Yes, and it's good. Try it." She ate cautiously and then slowly smiled. "Not bad." Ethan grinned. "See? Humans know a few things." They sat together by the small fire, and Kara noticed how easy it was to talk with him. She felt something warm inside, a feeling that had nothing to do with her empire, nothing to do with power, and everything to do with care. "Ethan," she said softly, breaking the silence. "Yes? You, strange human, you help, laugh, share, not for gain. Why?" Ethan looked at her, and for a long moment he did not answer. Then he smiled. "Because it matters. Because some things are worth doing, even if they don't help us survive, because sometimes caring for someone is the most human thing we can do." Kara stared at him. She did not have a word for it in her language. Care, trust, something between them that neither battle nor duty could define. As they settled down for the night, Kara found herself thinking of Ethan's words. They were strange, human, and yet they felt right. Perhaps humans were not as weak as her empire believed. Perhaps they were something stronger, something unexpected. And for the first time, Kara did not fear being near a human. She felt something else, curiosity, and maybe the first flicker of respect, admiration, or even something more. Outside, the stars shone over Valtora, distant and cold. Inside the cave, two enemies had become something closer than allies. They were beginning to understand each other, in ways that no battle or war could ever teach. Ethan smiled as he drifted to sleep, keeping one hand near Kara, ready to protect her if needed. And Kara, lying awake, realized that this human, this strange creature, might be the first person to show her a different way to live, a way that involved trust, care, and perhaps something she had never felt before. For now, that was enough. The next morning, Valtora was quiet again. The battle from the previous days had left the land scarred and blackened, but the air was still. Ethan, Cole, and Kara had moved farther from the ruins, finding a small ravine that offered cover from patrols. The alien princess was slowly regaining strength, though she still moved cautiously, aware that her wounds could reopen at any moment. Ethan carried a small pack of supplies. Moving carefully along the rocky terrain, Kara followed, leaning on a walking stick he had fashioned from a broken metal rod. Her eyes scanned the sky constantly, watching for the dark shapes of alien ships or the glint of enemy armor in the distance. "You are careful," Ethan said, breaking the silence. "Always watching. You'll wear yourself out if you don't rest." Kara tilted her head. "I must. Danger everywhere. I cannot be weak." Ethan smiled faintly. "You're not weak. But you don't have to be alone, Kara. I'm here. We can watch together." She studied him for a moment. Humans were strange creatures indeed. They spoke of trust in ways her empire did not understand. To Kara, trusting anyone outside her inner circle was dangerous, almost impossible. Yet Ethan spoke with such calm certainty that it made her pause. Hours passed as they moved carefully through the ravine. Ethan kept his eyes sharp, scanning for any sign of trouble. Kara began to help him, pointing out unusual tracks or strange rocks that might hide traps. She was still hesitant, but the more she worked alongside him, the more she realized his skill and experience were extraordinary. "You, skilled," she said quietly. "Much better than guards," Ethan laughed softly. "I get that a lot. But I'm not a fighter by choice. I fix things, I help people. That's enough for me." Kara thought about that. Helping people. Without orders, without expectation. Strange. Dangerous. Yet comforting. She realized she had never known anyone who acted purely out of concern for another being. Suddenly the quiet was broken. A sharp whistle carried through the ravine, followed by the sound of rushing footsteps. Ethan froze and Kara stiffened. "Ambush!" Ethan shouted, drawing his rifle. "Get down!" Kara dropped behind a rock, trying to move as quietly as possible. From the shadows, several figures emerged. Rogue mercenaries, humans or aliens, Ethan could not tell. They were armed and moving fast, surrounding the area. Ethan fired a few warning shots, but there were too many of them. One of the mercenaries charged toward Kara, and Ethan acted without thinking. He pushed her down, taking the brunt of a plasma blast that scorched his side. Pain shot through him, but he gritted his teeth and kept moving, keeping Kara safe. Kara froze, staring at him in shock. No one had ever risked their life for her like that. The thought made her pulse race, and something inside her shifted. This human, this simple, strange creature, was willing to die for her. Ethan fell behind cover, panting heavily, but he gestured for Kara to move. "Go, find a safe spot," he shouted, blood staining his uniform. Kara hesitated. Her instinct was to obey orders and protect herself, but she could not leave him. He had saved her life. Her hands gripped her energy blade tightly, and she leapt into action. She moved with speed and precision, cutting down the nearest mercenary before he could reach Ethan. The others faltered, surprised by her sudden aggression. Ethan seized the moment, firing carefully and supporting her as best he could. The fight was brief but intense, and when it was over, the mercenaries lay defeated, groaning and unmoving. Kara dropped her blade, breathing heavily. She looked at Ethan, expecting anger or pain. Instead, she saw him smiling faintly even as blood ran down his side. "You're insane," she said, her voice trembling. "Why risk yourself?" Ethan shook his head. "Not insane, just human. And you're important. That's all." Kara stared at him. Important. Not because she was a princess, not because of her rank, but because he chose to see her as someone worth saving. It was a new feeling, one that she had never known. Her empire had taught her that rank and duty defined importance. Yet here was a human who measured it differently. She knelt beside him, examining his wound. "Bad, very bad," she whispered. Her hands were gentle but sure as she applied pressure to stop the bleeding. Kara's translator struggled to keep up with her rapid thoughts, but the meaning was clear. She was concerned for him, truly concerned. Ethan groaned but did not complain. "I'll live. You're stronger than you think." Kara shook her head. "No, you risked your life. For me, no one. No one does that." "Not humans?" Ethan smiled faintly. "Some of us do. Not all, but some." Kara stayed with him through the night, tending to his wounds and keeping watch. She was silent most of the time, but her thoughts were active. Humans were strange creatures indeed. They fought, they killed, they built empires, but they also cared. They could act without expectation, without duty, without fear. That was what frightened her as much as it fascinated her. By morning, Ethan was stronger, though still in pain. Kara helped him to his feet, insisting that he rest while she kept watch. The bond between them had grown, subtle but powerful. She no longer saw him as a simple human. He was a protector, a companion, someone she could rely on, even if she did not fully understand why. "You trust me?" Ethan asked quietly, noticing her lingering gaze. Kara hesitated. Trust, the word was foreign. She had been trained to trust few, to rely on orders and to fear enemies. Yet here was a human who had risked everything for her, who had healed her wounds, who had shared food and warmth and conversation. Could she trust him? "Yes," she said finally, quietly. "I trust you." Ethan smiled, relief washing over his face. "Good? Because we'll need that trust if we want to get off this planet alive." The day passed slowly. They moved cautiously, keeping to the shadows and avoiding patrols. Kara helped Ethan gather supplies, and he taught her more about human survival techniques. She learned quickly, fascinated by the simplicity and effectiveness of his methods. "You, humans, clever," she said, her voice thoughtful. "Not just weapons. Brains," Ethan laughed softly. "Brains help. Weapons help too, but brains make sure we don't get killed using them." Kara smiled faintly, a small expression that startled her. She had not realized that she could enjoy someone's company, even a human's. She felt something unfamiliar. Warmth, trust, and a strange sense of companionship. As evening fell, they set up a small camp just as Ethan had taught her. He built a simple fire, and Kara sat across from him, watching him work. She felt safer than she had in days, and yet she was aware of the danger surrounding them. "You, human. Very strange," she said softly, echoing her earlier thoughts. "I get that a lot," Ethan replied with a small grin. "But that's okay. Strange isn't always bad." Kara looked at him, her large eyes reflecting the firelight. Something inside her stirred. Respect, curiosity, admiration. Maybe even something more. She did not know what it was, but she knew she wanted to stay near him. to learn from him, to understand this strange human way of life. Later, when the fire burned low, Ethan offered her a ration. She took it, grateful, and they ate in silence. The quiet was comfortable, filled with unspoken understanding. "You call me Kara," she said after a while, testing the human word for her name. "Of course," Ethan said. "It's your name. You deserve to be called by it." Kara considered this. Humans gave meaning to small things in ways her empire never had. A name, a smile, a word of thanks, they mattered. They carried weight and intention. She realized that the human way was different, but in some ways stronger than anything her empire could teach. When night fell completely, Ethan lay back, keeping one eye on her. "Sleep, Kara, you need it. Tomorrow we move again." Kara closed her eyes, letting exhaustion take her, but even as she drifted into sleep, her thoughts lingered on Ethan, on the strange, gentle human who had risked everything to save her. She did not yet understand the feeling swirling in her chest, but she knew one thing clearly. She would not forget him, and she would not forget the way he made her feel safe, cared for, and seen. Outside, the stars of Valtora shone cold and distant. Inside the small camp, two beings from different worlds had begun to trust each other, a trust that would be tested in ways neither could yet imagine. And for the first time since the battle began, Kara felt something she had never known: hope. The morning air on Valtora was sharp and cold. Ethan, Cole, and Kara had spent the night in a small cave hidden among jagged rocks. The fire from the previous evening had long burned out, leaving only the faint smell of smoke in the air. Ethan stretched his stiff muscles, wincing slightly at the burn on his side. He was healing, but slowly. Kara watched him carefully, her large silver blue eyes studying his every movement. "You move, slowly today," Kara said softly, her voice cautious. "I will survive," Ethan replied with a faint smile. "But you are stronger than you realize. You could lead, fight, and survive if you needed to." Kara tilted her head. "Humans, strange. You hurt, and yet you still protect me." Ethan chuckled softly. "That's what we do for people we care about." Her translator struggled with the word, leaving her momentarily confused. Care, trust, protection? These were concepts she understood in theory, but had never experienced. Yet with Ethan, she began to feel their weight, and it was stronger than any order or weapon she had known. They moved carefully down the rocky slope, keeping to shadows and avoiding patrols. Ethan had found a crude map of the area and believed they could reach a safer location where human forces might find them. Kara followed, leaning on a walking stick he had fashioned from a metal rod. "You, humans, very clever," Kara said, breaking the silence. "You find paths, hide, survive, not just fight." Ethan smiled faintly. "Brains help. Weapons help too, but brains make sure we don't get killed using them." Kara studied him for a moment. Humans, she realized, were strange creatures. They were unpredictable, dangerous, and yet sometimes wise in ways her empire could not understand. Hours passed as they moved cautiously. Kara's strength improved, and she began to participate more in their survival tasks. She carried supplies, scanned for threats, and even helped Ethan repair a small signaling device. Each action brought a small sense of satisfaction she had never felt before. To act for herself, for someone else, without orders, strange, yet empowering. As they rested near a small stream, Ethan pulled out a ration bar and offered half to Kara. She took it carefully, studying him as she ate. "You always share," she said. "I think it's important," Ethan replied. "Food, water, warmth. Small things matter when you're alive." Kara considered this. Her empire valued strength, power, and control. Humans valued small, simple things that made life worth living. She found herself admiring Ethan more with each passing hour. Suddenly, the air shifted. A low hum reached their ears, growing louder by the second. Ethan froze, scanning the sky. "Incoming," he whispered. "Varn patrols. Or worse, human mercenaries." "Get down!" Kara crouched behind a rock, but she felt a strange pang of fear she had not felt in days. She had learned to trust Ethan, and the thought of him being hurt again made her chest tighten. Ethan drew his rifle and scanned the horizon. A Varn cruiser was descending from the sky, its engines glowing bright against the morning sun. Soldiers moved quickly toward them. Kara's instincts told her to hide, but something in her shifted. She could not leave Ethan to face them alone. Before she could act, Ethan waved to her. "Stay close. Follow my lead." Kara nodded, gripping her energy blade tightly. Together they moved toward a hidden path Ethan had spotted the night before. Soldiers approached from both sides, weapons raised. Kara's heart pounded, but she remembered Ethan's words. Brains help. She looked for an opening. You first, Ethan said softly. Kara hesitated. He had been her protector, her guide. Yet now she realized she was not helpless. She could fight, she could protect him too. With a swift motion, she activated her energy blade, deflecting a blast aimed at Ethan. The soldier stumbled back, surprised. Ethan took advantage of the moment, pushing Kara toward the hidden path. They moved swiftly, ducking behind rocks and keeping low. The patrol faltered, unsure of their target. Ethan's tactics and Kara's sudden aggression created a small advantage they could exploit. By mid-afternoon, they reached the edge of a cliff overlooking a hidden landing zone. From a distance, a Varn cruiser hovered, its engine steady. Soldiers were gathering below, preparing to retrieve Kara. Ethan looked at her. You have to go. They will force you if we stay. I can't protect you from that. Kara shook her head.
No, I cannot leave you.
You saved my life. Ethan smiled faintly, though pain ran across his face. I will survive, but you are a princess. You belong to them. If you go, they might respect you and you can keep yourself safe. Promise me you will survive. Kara's chest tightened. Promise. She had never given a promise like this before. Yet looking at him, she knew she could. She nodded slowly. I promise you. Survive too. Ethan helped her to the landing zone. The Varn soldiers hesitated when they saw him, weapons raised. Kara stepped forward, raising her hand. Stop, she commanded, her voice firm, carrying the authority of her title. This human is under my protection. Do not touch him. The soldiers froze, confusion on their faces. Kara's words carried weight, and her tone left no room for argument. Ethan stared at her, astonished. No one had ever spoken to Varn soldiers like this, especially a human. You, human, Kara said quietly, turning to him. You, alive. Because of me. Strange world. Your people. Ethan smiled faintly. And you. Alive because of you. Strange world. Your empire. Kara looked at him, the weight of her emotions pressing against her chest. Gratitude, admiration, curiosity. Perhaps something more. She did not fully understand it, but she felt it strongly. The Varn cruiser's boarding ramp lowered. Kara stepped forward, standing beside Ethan. Take him, she said firmly. But he is not my enemy. You will not harm him. Understand? The soldiers looked at each other, then back at Kara. Yes, princess, one of them said cautiously. Ethan gave her a small nod. Thank you, he whispered. Kara hesitated. She had never received thanks in her life. To hear it from him after everything felt strange and powerful. She swallowed, unsure of what to say, and instead simply nodded. As he prepared to board a shuttle to return to human lines, Ethan turned back to her one last time. Take care of yourself, Kara. You'll be okay. I promise. Kara's chest tightened. She wanted to say more, to tell him something, but the words failed. She watched as he boarded the shuttle and lifted off, leaving her behind. For the first time in days, Kara felt a strange emptiness. The human who had saved her, who had taught her, who had shown her a different way to live, was gone, and yet she knew something had changed inside her. She touched her chest, feeling the warmth of the bond they had formed. Humans were strange creatures. They fought, they survived, they protected, and they cared. Ethan Cole had shown her that. And Kara, princess of the Varn Empire, felt something she had never felt before. Hope. As the Varn cruiser carried her away, Kara looked down at the landscape below. War, danger, and duty still surrounded her. But now she carried something else. A new understanding, a new respect, and a connection to a human who had defied everything she had known. Her heart beat with a new rhythm, one she did not yet understand. But she knew it was real. The stars above Valtora shone cold and distant, but Kara felt warmth in her chest. Ethan had survived. She would survive. And perhaps one day their paths would cross again. For now, she held on to the memory of the human who had called her simply Kara, who had risked everything for her, and who had shown her a world beyond duty and war. And as the cruiser soared into the sky, Kara whispered quietly to herself, almost testing the word. Human. Strange and important. The sun rose slowly over the horizon of Valtora, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. The alien landscape looked both beautiful and dangerous, Kara stood at the edge of the landing zone, her silver blue eyes fixed on the shuttle that would take Ethan Cole back to the human forces. She had spent the night restless, thinking about the strange human who had risked everything for her. He was clever, brave, and kind. More than that, he had made her feel something she had never felt before: trust, care, and even something closer to warmth in her chest. Ethan stepped out of the shuttle, leaning slightly on his still healing side. He had insisted on walking to meet her, ignoring the humans who offered assistance. Kara's heart tightened as she saw him. Even after everything, he looked calm, strong, and human. "Kara," he said softly, his voice carrying across the open space. "I'm ready." Kara nodded, but she could not speak immediately. Words failed her. She had trained for diplomacy, for command, for battle. She had never trained for this, saying goodbye to someone she had come to care for deeply. Ethan stepped closer, his hand brushing lightly against the side of her armor. "You'll be okay, Kara. Your people will take care of you now. And I'll see you again someday, I promise." Kara's chest tightened. She wanted to say more, to tell him how much his presence had changed her, but the words seemed small compared to what she felt. Finally, she managed a soft voice. "Ethan, human, strange, brave, you saved me more than life." Ethan smiled faintly. "And you saved me too, by letting me help you, by trusting me." "That's enough." Kara swallowed hard. She stepped closer, hesitant, her hand hovering near his. The wind blew softly across the landing zone, carrying the faint smell of smoke and metal from the distant battlefields. She realized she would never forget this human, this simple, strange man who had risked his life without expectation or fear. Ethan studied her, his expression serious.
"Kara, before I leave..."
He paused, searching for words. "I want you to know something. Humans, we say things sometimes that mean more than they sound. I need you to hear it." Kara tilted her head, confused. "Hear what?" Ethan took a deep breath. "Thanks, love," he said softly, looking directly at her. Kara froze. The words were simple, yet her translator struggled to interpret their weight. "Thanks, love." 2 words she had never heard directed at her in that way. They carried care, warmth, and meaning. Her pulse quickened. She could not move, could not speak. She had never been called love before, not by anyone, not even by her closest advisors or family. Ethan smiled faintly, though his own chest ached with the thought of leaving her. "I mean it," he said. "Thanks, love, for trusting me, for surviving, for letting me help." Kara's eyes widened. Her heart raced. She wanted to respond, to say something, anything, but the words caught in her throat. She could only stare at him, frozen in shock and awe. The shuttle engines hummed quietly in the background, ready to carry him away. Ethan reached out and gently took her hand. "It's okay," he said softly. "You don't have to say anything, just remember that I care always." Kara felt warmth spread through her chest. The touch was gentle but powerful, a simple human gesture that carried more weight than any words. She realized that she cared for him too, more than she had expected. Her chest tightened with a mix of gratitude, admiration, and something deeper that she did not yet understand. The shuttle's engines roared louder, signaling departure. Ethan released her hand reluctantly, stepping toward the ramp. Kara took a deep breath, forcing herself to speak. "Ethan, wait." He paused, looking back at her. "Yes?" Kara swallowed hard. "You strange human. You teach me. Care, hope, love." Her words were halting, but they carried everything she felt. Ethan's eyes softened. "Kara, that's all I ever wanted." The shuttle doors began to close. Ethan stepped inside, turning to give her one last look. Kara raised her hand in farewell, and for a brief moment their eyes held together, speaking without words. The shuttle lifted, rising into the sky. Kara watched as it disappeared into the clouds, her chest heavy with a mix of sorrow and hope. She felt a strange emptiness, but also a spark of something new, something humans called connection. In the quiet that followed, Kara stood alone, her silver blue eyes fixed on the horizon. She thought of Ethan's words, his touch, and the warmth in his voice. "Thanks, love." The words echoed in her mind, carrying meaning she could not fully translate. She realized that humans were indeed strange creatures. They fought, they killed, they built empires, but they also cared, protected, and loved in ways that could change the world. Ethan Cole had shown her that. For the first time, Kara felt hope, not just for herself but for her empire. She knew that the bond she had formed with Ethan, even across species and war, could be the first step toward understanding between humans and Varn. Days passed, and Kara returned to her palace. The Varn soldiers and advisors watched her closely, curious about her unusual behavior. She no longer spoke only of duty and orders. Instead, she carried a quiet confidence, a sense of understanding that came from experiencing something deeper than politics or battle. She thought of Ethan often, remembering the way he smiled, the way he cared, and the way he had risked everything without hesitation. His words, simple as they were, had left an indelible mark on her. "Thanks, love," she whispered softly to herself one evening, testing the words, feeling their weight. The phrase carried warmth, hope, and a strange sense of joy. She had never known that two words could feel so powerful. Meanwhile, Ethan returned to the human base. His squad greeted him with relief and surprise, amazed that he had survived the battle and the ambushes. Yet even in their praise, his thoughts were with Kara. He remembered her silver blue eyes, her calm strength, and the way she had begun to trust him. For weeks, he tried to contact her through signals, hoping to reconnect. Each attempt carried the memory of her hand in his, her hesitant trust, and the bond they had formed in the ruins of Valtora. Back on Valtora, Kara secretly observed the stars each night, wondering if Ethan looked at them too. She smiled faintly, imagining him thinking of her just as she thought of him. The bond between them, fragile yet strong, was a promise of something more than war, more than duty. Finally, a human envoy arrived on Valtora, bringing a message for Kara. It was simple, yet it carried weight. Ethan Cole survived and he remembered her. The words on the transmission were short but familiar. "Thanks, love." Kara's eyes filled with tears, though she did not know why. The words were human yet universal. They carried trust, care, and something deeper that transcended species. She whispered them aloud once more, letting the phrase linger in the air. For the first time in her life, Kara understood that connection, trust, and care were not weaknesses. They were strengths that could shape the future. Humans were strange, unpredictable creatures, but their hearts carried power beyond weapons or empires. Kara smiled softly, feeling the weight of the words in her chest. "Thanks, love," she whispered again, letting them become her own. And somewhere far away, Ethan Cole thought of her too, smiling faintly as he whispered to himself, "Kara, I hope you remember." Two beings from different worlds, from different empires, had shared something extraordinary, a bond that could survive distance, war, and difference. And though the stars shone cold above them, warmth and hope filled their hearts. In the years to come, historians would write of the first spark of understanding between humans and Varn. They would describe battles, diplomacy, and treaties. But the truth, the small but powerful truth, began with two simple words. "Thanks, love." A human had risked everything for an alien princess. An alien princess had begun to see humans differently, and in that small, fragile bond, the galaxy changed quietly, forever. Kara closed her eyes, feeling the memory of Ethan's presence, his smile, his kindness. She held on to the hope that they would meet again, that their strange connection would not end with the wars of Valtora. And far away, Ethan looked at the same stars, thinking of Kara, thinking of the trust they had shared, thinking of the simple words that had changed both their worlds. "Thanks, love."